Today's video is going to be about hard start kits. We talk about good, better, best in this series. We had one video where we released the Super Boost SPP7, which was rated for 3.5 to 5 tons. Today's video is going to be about the Kickstart KS1 3.5 to 5 ton. Very similar to the T05, which is 1.5 to 3 tons. Basically, the difference is the capacitor itself is a higher microfarad, but we're introducing now a potential relay. We want to talk about that potential relay, so stay tuned. We talk about this extensively on the smart board. We wire it up at a table for a different perspective, and then we also install it at the unit. We have a Kickstart, KS1 Kickstart, and this is for 3.5 to 5 ton. And so we're going to go ahead and install this. It has a potential relay, and when we get to the smart board, we'll talk about those potential relays and how they work. So there's a little bit more mounting involved with this component here. A lot more extension on my wire, so I can actually install this further down if I wanted to. But let's see if we can use the same mount up here, if that will work. And it doesn't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove that mount. I'm going to unplug my defrost control board. That's so when I get in here I do not short out the side of my contactor to the cabinet. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this start component and I'm going to mount it a little bit lower in the cabinet. So I'm going to go ahead and get my strap. All this is plumbing strap. Go ahead and cut a piece off. I'm going to come in here, take advantage of one of those screws, or not screws, but holes that they left. All right. That's in there nice and tight. Cut the excess off. Nice professional installation. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in my board just to go ahead and initiate that time delay. It's important to make sure your potential relay get another screw here, 1/4-inch screw. Okay, you heard the contactor pull back in, so that time delay is up. It's important to make sure that potential relay is out of the area of the panel, and also the screw has to be up. Gravity does play a little bit of a role in these potential relays.
And also make sure your connectors aren't touching the cabinet there. Okay, so now we can see we have the start capacitor, the potential relay, and now we have to wire this up. Now this doesn't take 208 or 240 volt, this is just 120 volt, so we only have to come up here to hermetic and connect it. Make sure my connections are tight. And the other side goes to common. Make sure my connections are tight. And as you can see there, I don't have anything zip tied, so we can see where the wires are going.
All right, that was pretty interesting what we did outside installing the KS1 Start Kit. KS1 Start Kit's been around for a very long time. It's very popular. The nice thing about the KS1 is you have your starting capacitor and the potential relay. It only has 2 wires on it, so it's very easy installation as we showed you. But let's take it a step further and let's learn from another perspective. If we were to take this start component with a run capacitor, a contactor, and wire it up on this table, how would that happen? This is how we learn, is we expand on new ways of understanding, new ways of challenging ourselves, how things work, and the reasons why things are done that way. So this is stripping away everything that you saw on the first perspective and just homing in on the start component. We got a contactor, compressor, some alligator clips. I have some wires that I made up here too. I have plenty of run capacitors so we can experience, adding some capacitors together to make a larger dual capacitor or larger single capacitor. Now we don't have any high voltage here. This is just all in theory, just connecting the dots. First thing before we go anywhere, let's talk about the compressor for a second. As you notice here, I've got my meter on the side of it. We are using the SE640. This is the meter that we choose to use at ideal conditions. We supply this voltage meter to all of our employees that are in the field for service and maintenance and installation. The reason why we support this meter so much is the data that we get from this, because it's a sensitive piece of equipment, has a higher value, and we owe that to our customers, and we owe it to ourselves to do the best job that we can do. So obviously we're not going to compromise anywhere. It's very expensive. It does require a little bit of maintenance if it's dropped or broken, or the batteries need to be replaced, or the leads need to be replaced. So we keep up with that, but more importantly, we make sure that we start our guys with this meter, and in the event that the meter does not read properly, we will replace it very quickly. So we have a lot of faith and confidence in this. I'm going to go ahead and remove this cover plate for our compressor terminals. And as you see here, I have 3 terminals here. All right. We know one's going to be common, one's going to be run, one's going to be start. But let's just say you don't know which is which. So I'm going to show you first, how do we know which one is common, run, and start? And then we're going to wire it up. So we're going to come over here to ohms. And what we're looking for is, what kind of resistance are we going to get between a pair of windings. So we're going to go ahead and go from the top left to the top right, and that number is 2. And then we're going to go ahead and leave our lead on the top left, and we're going to go to the very bottom, and that number is 4. All right, so we have 2.0, and then we have 0.4. All right, and so then we're going to come over here and go from the bottom to the top right, and so this would complete our combinations, and we have 2.4. So you see, I have 2.4, and then I have 2.4. So first of all, that tells you that everything is mathing everything is good. So we have 3 values within those different pairs. The highest value is always going to be your start winding. Well, in every combination, here we had 2, and in this combination we had 2.4. That goes to show you that anytime that I'm reading the value on this top right, I'm getting the highest number. So that will be my start winding. All right. And then we want to look at what is the next highest value. Well, the next highest value, okay, we have 2.1, I'm sorry, 2, and then here we have 0.4. So the next highest value would be our start winding, I'm sorry, our run winding at the bottom. Now, if you look at what that value is between run and start, we're getting the combination of start to common, and then we're getting the combination of common to run. And so start to run will always have the highest value because we're tied back into that common still. And if you look at the diagram, it expresses that very clearly. So we know that the top left will be common, the top right will be start, and the very bottom will be run. And so with that, we're able to now wire up our start capacitor or run capacitor and our common and all that, and make sure that we're not reversing any kind of polarity and creating a problem. So common, start, and run. Between common and start, we had 2. Between start and run, we had 2.4. And between run and common, we had 0.4. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and take these zebra gator clips here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just separate our colors. Not that colors mean anything, but we want to try to stay on some colors throughout this process just to try to ease any type of confusion. So I have a pair of reds, okay. I have a pair of yellows and a pair of black. So we're gonna go ahead and just put those over here, and let's go ahead and say that on the bottom side of the contactor, you know, we'll imagine L1, and on the bottom side of the contactor on the other side, we'll imagine L2. So L1 and L2. Obviously the contactor is open. When the contactor closes, L1 will come over and L2 will come over and energize these top 2 terminals and anything we have wired to them. I'm gonna put that back on the table, and after I'm done wiring this, I'll give you a bird's eye view as well. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and first wire up. I'm gonna go ahead and wire up common to my compressor. And that's going to come over here to our top left terminal of the compressor. All right, and now common is wired up. So basically L1 is wired up to our common. We're going to go ahead and take the other leg of power, which will be L2. And we are going to wire it up to the run winding of our compressor, which that's the very bottom. So we're going to hook this up to our run winding, and now we have L1 and we have L2. We have one winding left, which is our start winding. Now that start winding is shared on the same leg of power as the run winding. So we want to go ahead and come off of this again with our L2, okay? And now we want to go to a capacitor, excuse me. Now, it's kind of irrelevant to what size capacitor this needs for the purpose of this video. We're just trying to find out what legs we put in series and circuit with the start winding and whatnot for the purpose of the start kit. But keeping everything else in mind too, right? But if you are interested, it requires a 60 microfarad run capacitor. And this capacitor here, let's go ahead and show you, is a dual capacitor that's 60 plus 5. And so we want to always test that, even though we're not going to energize it, but it's just good practice. If I'm going to use this capacitor, I want to make sure that I am getting the proper microfarads, even though it's brand new out of the box. So we're going to go ahead and put 1 lead on common, 1 lead on Herm, and we should read 60. And so we read 60 there. The other terminal, the fan terminal, it's irrelevant. We're not concerned about what that's going to read because we don't have a fan motor to hook up in this application, this perspective. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our L2, okay, which is being used for the run winding. We're going to take that same leg and we're going to put it on common of the capacitor. So we're just going to go ahead and energize the top of that terminal in theory. And now we have to put the hermetic on the start winding. So I'm going to use yellow. You know, typically you find 3 different colors. So I'm using 3 colors too, just to help, you know, hopefully help you better understand, you know, with what you see in the field already. So I'm going to hook this up to my start winding of my compressor. Give me a second here. It's wanting to slip off the terminals, not wanting to stay on that terminal. These are brand new, so got to break them in a little bit. All right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just connect this a little bit better there. And there we go. So, so L2 coming into my capacitor, common. Well, common on the compressor is L1, so don't confuse those 2 commons. This is just a common terminal. This is a common winding. Big difference. So common coming in, hermetic coming out, which going over to my start winding. That puts the capacitor in circuit, okay? This is technically the 3rd leg, even though it's L2. All right, we have a potential relay. We have the run capacitor. There's no way to really mount this. I'm just gonna leave it here on the table, of course. It's already hooked up to the capacitor here. This is a start capacitor. Microfarads on this is very high. The potential relay, which we're going to explain when we get onto the smart board on how that works, is going to be wired over to common and hermetic. Doesn't matter which one you use, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and just connect it up. Put one on common, and put the other one on my hermetic wire, or hermetic terminal. And that's everything we have to do to wire this up. I want to go ahead and give you a quick bird's eye view with the camera, and then I'll put the camera back, and then we're gonna say, what if our capacitor was not a 60 microfarad? What if we had other capacitors that we can get 60 microfarads out of if we added them together? So we're gonna take it to that level here in just a second. But first, let me go ahead and show you what we have, just because I know the angle that we're on doesn't give us the best view. So here's our compressor. All right, you have common, start, and run, okay? Here's a bird's eye view of the capacitor. You can see that we're not using the fan terminal. We're only using the hermetic and the common terminal to the capacitor. All right. So we have the red wire coming off of L2 side of the contactor, and that L2 side is also feeding the run winding, as you saw there. The yellow alligator clip is coming off of the hermetic side. all right, which is the start, feeding the start winding, okay? And so that is what puts that in circuit. And then in parallel with that, also in series, but it's in parallel at this point, but then the start capacitor, okay, is in circuit as long as the potential relay is in the closed position. It's in circuit back to the hermetic, so you get that boost of energy to give that compressor that starting torque. And we'll talk more about that when we get back to the smart board. Here's the other capacitors that I have here that we're going to explore adding together. And I'm actually, instead of using alligator clips like I have in one of my videos, I'm going to use these terminals here just to better express, you know, adding those capacitors together. All right, so stay tuned. I'm going to go ahead and put this camera back, and we'll go ahead and get on into exploring adding capacitors. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the hermetic wires, the common wires, remove the capacitor. We'll go ahead and put it back in the proper box. Okay. All right. So remember, they have to be back in circuit, but through the capacitor. Let's say we need a 60 microfarad capacitor. I don't have one, but what I do have is a 55 plus 5. How would we do that? Well, we're going to go ahead and take this dual capacitor out of the box. We're going to check the microfarads on it, so we know it's 55 and 5. We'll go ahead and put our SE640 meter over on microfarads. I'm going to come over to common and hermetic. I should read 55. And I do. I'm going to leave on common. I'm going to come over here to fan. I should read 5. And I do. So I need to read 60. So very simply, all I need to do is take and jump the hermetic side over to my fan side. And when I do that, I have made a single capacitor. So I've taken my dual and I've now made it a single. So we're going to come back over here to the common. And I'm going to come over here to fan where you read 5 just a second ago. And you should read 60. And we read 60. All right, and that's either way. I can leave it on common and come over here to hermetic. We're still going to read 60. There you go, 60. So now I've taken a dual capacitor, 55 plus 5, and I made it a single 60 microfarad capacitor. Now to wire this up, we're going to take L2. We're going to energize our common terminal. Okay, and then we're going to add either the 5 side or the hermetic side. Well, I don't have any additional terminals to hook to on my 5 side, so to make things easier, I'm going to come over here to my hermetic side. Plus, if that side of the capacitor, that 5 side that I'm adding to it, if that got weak, the last thing I want to do is rely on that. I want to rely on my side that gave me the majority of my microfarads, which was the 55 microfarad side, even though they're both added together anyways. And so that's that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the camera again. I'm going to go ahead and hook our potential relay back up to it. One side's going to go to common. The other side's going to go to the hermetic side, which theoretically both of these are hermetic sides. Okay. All right. And I'll give you a bird's eye view of that. And so you see our start capacitor, our potential relay with the 2 blue wires is coming over to the run capacitor that we have now jumped and made a larger single capacitor. We have yellow on Herm, red on common, and our 2 blue wires from our potential relay are hooked up to that. All right, so very simple, very simple. All right, so we're gonna try one more, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it to the smart board. So
let's just say that this capacitor was not available either. Go ahead and hook everything. Take our jumper back off. Put our capacitor back in the box. And let's just say that, you know, hey, I'm in the middle of nowhere. It's hours to get back to anywhere. Supply house will be closed. Can't leave this family down. Got to give them some air. I've got a 45 plus 5 and I have a 10. Can I make a single capacitor out of this? Well, let's find out. We need 60. First thing we're going to do, as always, let's verify that out of the box, these capacitors even have that value that the labels suggest. So the 10 microfarad capacitor, 9.97. So 9.97, that's basically 10. We're going to come over here to common and fan, and we get 4.9. We're going to go from common to hermetic, and we have 44.6. So we're going to call that 5 and 45. So what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and add those together. So we want to add first the hermetic side of the dual capacitor to the fan side, and that should immediately add up to 50. Next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and take terminal off of the hermetic side, run it over to one side of our single capacitor, the 10 microfarad. So now this would add up all the microfarads necessary, but we have to put our commons in series with each other. I'm going to use a different color wire just to not confuse anybody on the different terminals. And so at this point, we have made one large single capacitor. In theory, it should be 60 microfarads. We're going to have to test that out though. So we're just going to come here to this last capacitor where we used to read 10, and let's see how many microfarads we get. We get 59.9. All right. And so any combination, I can come over here to common, come over here to what used to say 5, and I should still read 60 microfarads. Come over here to this Herm, I should read 60 microfarads, and I do. And so now we know we can safely put this in circuit for our start winding. So in order to do that, we want to energize common, you know, L2, which is the same side we used as our run winding. Now we can take our start winding and we can put it here on the the 10. We can put it on the 5, or we can put it on the hermetic side here. But when I do that, I want to strongly suggest that you put it on the highest value, because as these capacitors can weaken, you want to make sure that you set yourself up for a little bit more reliability for that start winding and not have any issues by going to that higher microfarad if these other ones were to weaken, even though they all show the same value. And then as they weaken, they'll show you that new value together. Now, I only have one spot left. And so before I use it, I'm going to go ahead and take my potential relay. I'm going to hook it back up. Now, I can hook it up right here to common and, you know, now hermetic of that 10 microfarad, and I'm fine. Again, I'm still going to, I can hook it up to the common side here, but I definitely want to make sure that I'm coming over here to my hermetic side. I want to come over here to my hermetic side. There we go. And by doing that, I'm coming off my highest value all by itself, even though in conjunction they're all 60 microfarads. All right, so some of these wires give you a extra connector on them. I strongly recommend you add a connector if you don't have it. I'm going to show you here with my camera
a different angle. If you look here, you see my start capacitor, my run capacitors here. They're both tied together where I have that single large 60 microfarad capacitor. You know, I have L2s, both my L2s, one going over to my run, the other one coming over here to my common to energize that leg of power to put the run capacitor and start capacitor in circuit through the potential relay. But if you notice, my yellow wire is just sitting over here all by itself. It's not even hooked up yet, and that goes to my start winding. Okay, so what I want to show you here is I don't have an extra spot to put my alligator clip on, right? And so if you're in that situation, they make special connectors that you can put on here that are female on one side and they're two male. So it's a female to two male, and that combination, they're like brass. You will definitely want to use that in this application. And the purpose of this video, where I'm going to hook this up, is I'm going to come over here to a spare post. I'm going to go ahead and just move some of this stuff around. If you look here, my whites is what I was using for my hermetic side. Okay, I have a couple of spare posts here. I know this is on the 10 microfarad side, even though I'm reading between here and here 60 microfarads. So as long as everything's fine, I'm okay to do this. But if I had that connector that I'm talking about, I would use the 45 microfarad side to hook my start winding up, my hermetic wire to my start winding right there. But this is still hooked up properly. But I just want to give you a little bit of transparency on that. So I'm just going to kind of just pan the camera around so you can see a bird's eye view. A lot of people get confused on adding capacitors, and we're going to be talking about this quite a bit, just to try to back that confusion down. See the potential relay here, start capacitor, contactor. Okay, so and so we're going to go ahead and end on this note, and we're going to go ahead and take it to the smart board. So stay tuned. We're at the smart board now. We're going to take it a step further on a third perspective. For those that want to know how to wire this up, how the potential relay works, we could talk a little bit more about that, and why it's important for that potential relay to be there. When we were talking on the last video about the Super Boost, these are on the lower spectrum of price range, and they have lower results. Can they unlock a compressor? Can they reduce inrush amps? Yes. However, what we want to look at is, where's my potential relay? If I were to take this apart and look at what's on the inside, well, we have our capacitor, and then we do have a relay up in here, but you know, this thing's going to have to pick up a little bit of heat before it drops out of circuit. And what we see a lot of the times are these will pretty much implode when they go bad, and they stay warm for a very long time. And so, you know, you may wind up having to change them out a little bit more often, especially if you start to feel them heat up and not cool down while the system's running. That's not good. Well, the kickstart has a potential relay. So because of that potential relay, we are able to have a higher microfarad to unlock the compressor or reduce those inrush amps. But the potential relay is something to ensure that this does not stay in circuit for no more than less than a second. And so we're going to cover that. Before we get into that, let's go over the good, better, best on start kits. I have two here that look very similar because they both have potential relays. They are two different brands. We have the 5-to-1, and then we have the KS1. And then over here we have three different meters, the good, better, best. You know, I can take myself and say that I am a consistent value. Anytime that I'm showing you any one of these start kits in the field, and any one of these meters that I'm using in the field to measure that inrush amp. So if I wanted to put the Super Boost in, and what is my inrush amp if I use this meter? well, if I use the Super Boost and I use this meter, or the Super Boost and this meter, will I get the same value? The answer is no. And so if the meters are going to give me different values because some are more sensitive than others, they can give you a better reading. And start kits aren't priced the same. And when you start getting the larger capacitors that have potential relays, you're obviously going to have better results on those inrush amps. So you're going to be able to do a better job of unlocking that compressor if it's locked up, or reducing that inrush amp if you're just trying to conserve power and take that additional load off that start winding. And so I can get different values here, but what I mean by me being a consistent value, me as an individual at my level of experience and education, I'm going to have a consistent value, meaning I'm not going to tell you anything different. So if I were to change myself out with somebody with a different value, use a different component, use a different meter, the values are going to be all over the place. So when you're basically getting second opinions, or you're hearing somebody tell you something and somebody else comes out and they tell you something different, some of those values can be consistent, some of those values can be inconsistent because you're dealing with different set of skills, different tools, and different components. And so it's important to try to understand that, so we can just all agree that if we use the best and the best, and then we have a highly qualified seasonal technician, the results are going to yield most likely with the best value that you can get. And we have to trust that when we ascertain which company we use, and who they hire and who they train, and how they are in their level of experience when they come out to your house, what kind of calls are routed that day, how much time they have, how much patience they're able to provide on that diagnostic. There's a lot that goes into it. It's our jobs as tradesmen to level up in our trade, to share our knowledge, and to continue to pass down good quality practices. So when we do these videos, we want to try to get into some of these scenarios where we can actually offer good, better, best on the tool side, the component side, so we can show with transparency what that looks like. It's hard to disagree when we can see it in real time. Hey, what's the different value? So there is a video that we'll be releasing here where we actually compare all these in one video. So definitely look for that. Getting right into it, we're going to wire this up and go over that potential relay. We see we have a contact and we have a coil on the potential relay. We have a bleed resistor on our capacitor here, okay? And then we have a dual capacitor here. This is just bird's eye view of these components. L1, L2, 2-pole contactor. We got our compressor and our condenser fan motor. We're not going to label these components, so rewind the video if you need to so you can hear what they are again, but we will talk about them as we go through it. And some of this is already pre-wired, so I'm going to begin with what's pre-wired, and then we're going to get right into how do we wire it, and when is my start capacitor in circuit and when is my start capacitor out of circuit. Now we all know that the start capacitor is in circuit only on startup, but we're going to talk about how it's in circuit and how it's out of circuit with this potential relay, which is what makes this thing very special. So I'm going to go ahead and wire up terminals 1 and 5 to my start capacitor. I'm going to use black. Oops, excuse me. Let me get all my colors here. All right, so I'm going to come over and just say 1 is pre-wired. Typically it's a white wire. And so I'm going to show you here, if I'm holding up my kickstart, the capacitor itself has 2 white wires coming off of it, and they both go to my potential relay. So that's what I'm trying to show you right now, how they have that wired up. So we have one side wired to terminal 1, we have the other side wired to terminal 5. And it comes pre-wired that way. The other 2 wires are coming off of 2 and coming off of 5. And those are the 2 wires that you need to wire up. So it's only 2 wires that you need to worry about, but you want to kind of understand why they have this here, so we'll cover that. The 2 wires that are blue, they're coming off the potential relay, and this is where you're going to wire to your capacitor for common and for hermetic. And when it's on that hermetic, it's in parallel at that point, but it's in series. All right, so it's in parallel when it ties in, but it's in series with the start winding. And so I like to start these off by pre-wire the start kit, and then we'll wire the run capacitor, contactor, compressor, and then the condenser fan motor. So it doesn't matter which one you take, 5 or 2, you know, the 2 blue wires, and where you landed on common or hermetic. We're just going to go ahead and say 2. We'll come over to hermetic, and 5 will come over to common. So you're basically just going to take those 2 wires, and I'm going to grab a capacitor here. And I'm holding up a dual capacitor, just like what's on the board. And all you're going to do is you're just going to take these 2 wires, and you're going to wire 1 to hermetic and 1 to common, just like that. Okay, and that's all we've done. And so this now puts the start kit in circuit with the run capacitor. And what keeps the start kit or the start capacitor out of circuit is the potential relay. So we're going to go ahead and go to our next step, and we're going to go ahead and wire up L1 and L2. All right, so basically L2 is going to come over. It's going to land on one side of the contactor. L1 is going to come over. It's going to land on the other side of the contactor. All right, those would be your input voltages, 2 legs of power. And I have to pick one of these, doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to use red because, you know, I'm going to follow red all the way through to R here and R here, you know, just a little bit easier. Colors don't mean anything, but it does help us keep track of what end of the wires on one end and what end of the wires on the other end. So utilizing this top pole of the 2-pole contactor, we're going to come out and we're going to come with first energizing our common terminal. Okay, now remember, this common here is not the same as common on the compressor. And we explained that in all the perspectives. So we're going to come out with the other side, and this is just going to come over to our run winding. All right, that's pretty simple. And so now we have actually tied in common to where it's supposed to be from L2 everywhere for the compressor, the capacitor, and the start kit. We're going to take the L2 and we're going to continue that, and we're going to feed our run winding of our condenser fan motor. We're going to go ahead and take this wire out, and we're going to come all the way around. We're going to land it. I'm going to go ahead and put a little arrow here. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and drop an arrow in here too. And I already got an arrow there. Good. So you can follow where the electricity is going. You can follow the path. We're going to go ahead and take L1. We'll go ahead and wire up common on the fan motor and common on the compressor. We're going to come out and we're going to run over to common. We're going to do it again. Now I'm going to have to switch my color up because, as you can see, that's not going to show up too well. So I'm going to come over here and just continue with white. And I'm going to tie in. And now we have 240 volts, L1 and L2, on the fan motor and on the compressor. Now, granted, it takes 208, 240 to run. It's not going to run because it's still missing the leg that goes on the start winding, even though that's coming off of L2. So we're going to have to feed hermetic on start and the fan on start here. I'm going to go ahead and use two different colors just to make that a little bit easier. We'll say yellow for the compressor, and we'll say purple for the fan motor. So I'm going to come over here from fan, and I'm going to run it down and around over to my start. And so, yep, that is coming off the L2 side, okay? Because everything off this capacitor is coming off of L2. We're going to take the hermetic, and we're going to bring it over to our start winding of our compressor. Everything here on the high voltage side is wired up. There's nothing else that needs to be done. We're not done with the video. We're going to show you a couple more things. But I want to go ahead and just erase this and do it one more time so I can explain this potential relay. Now, same thing. We don't like to go over videos at the equipment because there's so many things involved with that. There's so many things that can convolute our thinking process and just kind of make things a little bit too busy. When they're too busy, what will happen is we'll wind up having confusion and we won't learn, and that's the whole point of what we're trying to do is learn. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that, you know, there are no misunderstandings. I'm going to leave my two blue wires just kind of hanging out right there. Let me go back to blue. Let's go ahead and kind of leave these hanging out. We're going to leave it pre-wired, the start capacitor to the potential relay. Just leave these two blue wires here, and now we're going to cover this potential relay. So if you look here between 1 and 2, all right, 1 and 2, and then you have 5. All right, so let's look at that for a second. Between 2 and 5, I have a coil. Between 1 and 2, I'm going to use a different color here. I have a set of contacts. Now, this would mean that the contact is open between 1 and 2. And that's actually not accurate. This contact is normally closed. So if I'm saying this is normally closed, and now we're going to go back to wiring this up, then what I'm saying is if I come down to 2 and land it on hermetic, and then out of hermetic over to start, you see that? Okay, then I'm saying that the moment I put power, okay, from L2 over here to common, all right, and I come over here and I tie this over to common, then what I'm saying is now this happens to be an input giving me coil voltage. And it doesn't matter if which blue wire I hook up to hermetic or common here. One's getting coil voltage, the other one is getting contact voltage, and now that happens immediately. So it's called a kickstart because if the coil voltage is present, okay, then the contact is open. And so what we're saying is literally this start component is in circuit with the start winding the entire time it's not running, which means it's doing absolutely nothing. And so for a fraction of a second, when it comes on, it's taking it out of circuit. So it's like a kick. So, but it's not a kick like it's kicking. It's kind of like it's already kicked, and the moment it comes on, it's taking its foot off of it, right? And so that's where these potential relays are a great thing. Is it's always in circuit when the contactor is not supplying power here. It's always in circuit at this point. The moment that we put L2 or L1, doesn't matter, the moment we put voltage here, we get voltage on our coil, the contact opens, taking this out of the start circuit, leaving the run capacitor in circuit, but taking the start capacitor out of circuit. And so, in the way they have it wired up here, it doesn't matter which one of the blue wires you put on there, it's going to be in circuit, right? And so what's really neat about that is it's always in circuit because it's always like this. And the moment you take this away, you have a normally closed circuit keeping the start capacitor on here, which is doing absolutely nothing. The moment you put L2 here, the contact opens up, taking this out of circuit. So it's a quick second that compressor gets that 270 to 325 additional microfarads on that start winding. And it's like less than a second, and it's gone. And then what stays in there, if this is a 60 microfarad capacitor for that compressor, or a 35 microfarad run capacitor for that compressor, it's now going to stay in circuit because there is no potential relay to take this out of circuit. So this is always in circuit. That's why it's called a run capacitor. This is not always in circuit. It's only in circuit when there's no power, and when there is power applied, it's immediately out of circuit. So that for that fraction of a second, that start winding is getting that initial 325 microfarads. On top of that, run capacitors microfarads too. So it's getting a lot of energy, and which is taking that starting torque, that independency that compressor has, and it's delivering starting capacity at a lower inrush amp, and making your electric bill less, damage on your start winding less, reliability higher, the equipment's dependability is now there for a much longer period of time. And down here in Florida, these things come on a lot. The hardest thing on the motor is to get it to come on and run, because these motors are pushing refrigerant, so they're under a load. If pressures aren't equalized, if there's anything else going on, then if expansion valves are in play, anything to increase that load, that starting load, is going to put more stress on those windings of the compressor motor. And so when we start introducing start components to them, we're really just trying to give it that boost, that quick little kick, hence it's called a kickstart. And sometimes these things just lock up and they just need it. And that's just the go-to remedy to get them to unlock before, inevitability, they need to be replaced. However, potential relays allow a better starting capacitor, okay, because it can take it out of circuit the moment it gets coil voltage. And it only gets coil voltage when the contactor is energizing everything to come on. And so if this has coil voltage, just like we went over all of our other relays, it's normally closed. It's just a normally closed relay. The moment that it gets coil voltage, it opens up, and when it opens up, this is no longer in circuit. So it's like it's in circuit doing absolutely nothing until it gets a call to come on, and then it's out of circuit. So it's like that split second or less that you're getting a ton of microfarads, a ton of energy on that start winding. So really cool thing there. So I'm going to go over another thing that might make this a little bit more interesting. I'm going to add a capacitor to it, because not all cases do we have the right size capacitors on our truck, because as we go through the day, we wind up utilizing components, and we don't get the opportunity to stock our trucks as often as we like, even though it's always good to have a healthy stock truck all day long. But what if we're trying to get through our day without making another trip? Let's just say that we needed, we'll just say that we needed, I'm going to say 75 microfarads. Let's go ahead and just write a couple of values down so we can stay on track. Say that we needed 75 microfarads here, and say here we needed, I'm going to say we need 5 microfarads here. I was going to say 10, and maybe I'll do that one too. So we're going to say that this capacitor up here happens to be a 35 plus 5, and say this capacitor here happens to be a, let's see here, say it's a, how do I want to do this? If I said it's a 25 plus 10, will that give me the math that I'm looking for? 25 plus 5 here, let's see, I can make that 40, 10, 25, that's 35, 70, I'm going to say 30. Say this is a 30 plus, I'm just going to say this is a 30 plus 5. Yeah, I should be able to do that. So I can get 40 here, 75. All right, let me go back. There we go. Sorry about that. 35 plus 5 and a 30 plus 10. And so what we're trying to achieve is 75 plus 5. So we have 2 dual capacitors. We need 1 larger dual capacitor. So we have to look at how easy would that be to do. So I'm going to go ahead and just change some colors up a little bit. I'm going to use purple, and I'm going to say we can go ahead and add this one and this one together. And if we did that, that automatically becomes 40. All right. And so we're already getting there. And then if I were to add, I'm going to go ahead and write that down here. Now this is 40. I'm going to go ahead and take and erase this. I'm going to come back and say, I'm going to take this terminal, this hermetic, and I'm going to run it over to here. And now I have 40 plus 35. Okay. And to complete that, I'm going to have to come over and I'm going to use red. I'm going to say, I'm going to have to tie this common and this common together. And when I do that, I've made a larger dual capacitor. Now it's still dual because I have this terminal over here all by itself, which is going to read 5. So I've got 35 plus 30 plus 10. So I've got 40 plus 35, and that equals 75. And now up here, because it's 1 dual capacitor, it's really, let me go ahead and erase this thing. It's really 75 plus 5. And so it's 1 gigantic dual capacitor. And so we can come over here and now we'll go ahead and just start wiring up a couple of things that need to be present to complete the start windings for my motor and compressor. I'm going to come over with my fan motor, and I'm going to go ahead and say that the fan motor is going to energize off the 5 microfarad side of my dual capacitor on the start winding. I'm going to come off of hermetic. I'm taking the highest value. This one's 35, this one's 30, and this one is 10. I can come off at any one of these because when I read it, I'm getting 75 microfarads. But it's always good practice to come off the highest value. And I'm going to run this over to my start winding of my compressor. Okay. And so now my run capacitor is complete with the exception of providing it L2. And so to provide it L2, I say L2 because I know I'm already going to wire L2 to my top. And so we need to come out and wire to our capacitor. And with this, we have now energized L2 all the way, and now we can have polarity when we put 240 on our motors. I say motors, I mean the compressor motor and the condenser fan motor. We're going to go ahead and finish wiring up a couple of the terminals since we're on red. We're going to go ahead and say we want to come over, and I'm going to take the long way around, and we're going to wire up the run winding to our compressor, and we're going to wire up the run winding to our condenser fan motor. There we go. And we have our common winding, which is going to come off of L2, or I'm sorry, L1. So we're going to wire up our condenser fan motor. Let's do this. Run a little lower so it's a little cleaner. We're going to come up. At this point, our condenser fan motor is complete. We're going to go ahead and take L1 again, and we're going to wire up our compressor. I'm going to go ahead and switch the color over to white just so it shows a little cleaner. All right, there we go. There we go. So now we have our compressor done and our condenser fan motor done. We have not completed our start component. So to put that in circuit, we're going to go ahead and pre-wire it first. We're going to go ahead and say that, 1 was already pre-wired and 5 was already pre-wired to the start capacitor. The wires that you need to connect are off of 5 and off of 2 for contact and coil. And it doesn't matter which one you put where, but I always recommend that you go to the highest value on the hermetic side, which we know this one's 35 by itself, this one's 30 by itself, and this one's 10 by itself, even though they're all 1 at 75 microfarads. So I'm going to go ahead and take 2, and I'm going to wire it over to the hermetic side of my 35 post, and then I'm going to take terminal 5 up here on my potential relay, and I'm just going to run it over to, and just to make it a little cleaner, I'm going to run it down here. So I'm going to take 5, I'm going to run it down, and come down here to my common portion of my capacitor. So if we follow L2 comes in, comes out, feeds the capacitor here, feeds the capacitor here, is coming up, it's feeding 5. We have 5 feeding the start capacitor, coming out of the start capacitor over to 1, coming back up to 2. 2 is coming over here in parallel with the hermetic winding, is coming out on my start winding, but the moment the contactor pulls in, it drops that out of circuit, and the only thing that can stay in circuit is the hermetic winding from the run capacitor, which is in conjunction with this one, giving us 75 microfarads over to our start winding to stay in circuit. Obviously, common and run is always in circuit while the contactor is pulled in. And then that just repeats itself. When the contactor drops out, the only thing that is in circuit at that point is 1 and 2 are normally closed, but because there's no power, there's no energy on the start winding. So it's only that energy is only going to be coming off of this for a split second, which is why it's called a kickstart. I hope this helps you out. We try to dumb this stuff down as much as possible, so it's not like hyper focused on, hey, you got to be this glorified technician that's been doing it for 20 years to understand what we're talking about. We're talking to all levels, including DIYers that want to just generally learn this stuff. This stuff is on Amazon to buy. This stuff is on at Granger. Not to promote those companies, but those are e-commerce companies that you don't need brick and mortar to walk into. Typically, your brick and mortar stores want to see a licensed contractor walking in there that has to have a business account set up. So there's a lot of people that have made this stuff available to get a lot of these electrical components. However, warranties and guarantees and all that fine print that says we guarantee this product for X number of months or a year, that's only going to come from a contractor, because they're licensed and the manufacturers are going to always recommend that they be the ones to diagnose and install those parts. So if you are DIY and you're doing this, your warranty is going to be a lot different than what a licensed contractor is going to have. So there's overhead involved, and there's a lot of other things that dictate those prices. So as we talk about good, better, best, we're not really talking about this stuff is good, better, best in a sense that only a company is going to know that. This is also for those DIYers that want to say, well, what I can put my own start kit in. It's only 2 wires. You just showed me how to do it, and that's great. Which one should I buy? Which meter should I use to know? We went back. I'm going to go back a page. When we used the UE meter, we didn't receive a value until we wound up getting into soft starts, which this video is not about soft start, but we have a video that we're releasing on soft starts. And we compared every one of these in that video, good, better, best, in real time. So you can see, wow, that meter didn't read a value, or that meter did read a value. Maybe I shouldn't use that meter. Maybe that's a good meter, but maybe not a good meter to read for inrush amps with. And that's what I'm talking about right now. So there's a lot that technicians can bring to the table, and you always want to give them that value, and that company, that local company that you want to support, that's there for you when you need them. Here at Ideal Conditions, we love to pass on knowledge. We love to be transparent. We care about our customers. We care about people that will never be our customers, that just want to know this stuff. It's our job to always pass down that knowledge. There's a share button that you can always share this with somebody else that promotes just that. Leave a comment. We read those comments. Like our channel. Hit the like button. Definitely subscribe if you haven't already, so you can get notified on that next video that comes out. Thanks. We appreciate your support. Stay safe. Be good.